Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, I'm so happy because I get to hang out with my friend, Frank Clifford. Now, Frank is the principal of the London School of Astrology, the very prestigious London School of Astrology. And if you didn't know yet, you should know that there's a huge event coming up, what I'm calling the online conference event of the year. It is a joint London School of Astrology and Synchronicity University event. And this is going to be an amazing conference called Embracing the Community, a celebration of astrologies. Some of the brilliant, most legendary astrologers alive today and future legends alive today are going to be participating in this event. There are coupon codes to get 50% off. They are limited use, and I will link to them in the description below. Frank is here. Welcome, Frank.
Hi, Nadia. Hi there. How are you doing?
I'm good. Well, I'm so happy that you're here because I know we're going to talk. We're going to learn a little bit about each other, but also I'm especially interested in all the educating you do, because that is a big part of the legacy that you're creating as well right now with the London School of Astrology and teaching around the world. All these wonderful things that you do. So how about we start with, well, what do you want to start with? Let's start with, tell me about the London School of Astrology. How did you become such a big dog in the astrology world where you're leading this incredibly prestigious school?
Well, I've been big dog, yes. I've been barking for a long time, I guess. So,
That'll do it.
But that would do it. I started astrology when I was 16, and like a lot of people do, great interest in it. I became obsessed with it, as we do. And I was very aware that I didn't want to put any pressure on myself, really. So during my 20s, I really kept my head down, studied the craft, did a little bit of writing. Mid-20s, I published my first book, which was a book on astrological data. It was called British Entertainers, and started to publish other people's work. But I was just conscious that I wanted to learn the craft before I dared to try and teach anybody or present anything. And being in London, you're surrounded by just the most amazing names, and you take that for granted. You think, oh, I'll go down and see Liz Green on a Sunday at the CPA, or I'll go off to see Melanie Reinhardt at Caledonian Road, which was where some of the lectures were at times. And it was a great education. I didn't realize how rare that was. I just took it for granted that we could do that. And writing, I wrote my first astrology book in my late 30s, late 30s, called Getting to the Heart of Your Chart. And by that time, I'd been teaching for about 10 years as well. And I really felt that I couldn't write or teach unless I felt comfortable, unless I felt I had something new, I had a new take on something or a new style. Because when you're publishing and when you're teaching, you are alongside some brilliant minds. And that's intimidating, of course. And I wanted to be at least comfortable, at least confident with what I knew, and that I had a voice of some kind before I started teaching, lecturing, and also writing about astrology, rather than just data collecting as I did in my 20s. So it took a while. It really took until my Saturn return at 29 before somebody pushed me out there to stand up and give a talk, because I was also terrified of talking in public, and incredibly shy as well. So that's a long answer to your short question. What about you? Can you tell me your story?
Well, let me to ask you, you are shy? Because you're like the last person I would think of as shy. You are very effervescent. As far as I know, yes, the person I know. First of all, such a leader in the community, but then also, yes, personally, I would never think of you as shy, but thank goodness for those people who push us, right? Who say, no.
That's right, yes. Yeah. I guess, having Saturn in Gemini, I I guess, sort of terrified of sounding stupid, of it being ill-informed, all the things that stopped me from rushing out like an Aries in my 20s, saying, I'm here. And in England, you do that, and people just turn around and say, okay, see you later. In America, they're always looking to make somebody the next big star of something. So it's a very different atmosphere. It's very Jupiter versus Saturn in England. And so my feeling with that was just keep my head down and do it slowly, do the odd class from 29 onwards, and it built and developed. And I love to teach. That's the thing. So I always said to myself, I've seen some great teachers over the years. I've seen some great astrologers who are bad teachers, who haven't got the patience, the energy. And for me, it is all about, if you can't convey it to the person in front of you, you shouldn't be doing it. So my feeling always with teaching is that if I still love doing it, if the students enjoy, if they're learning, if we're laughing together, learning together, then I'll keep doing it. Why do it if it's not a joy? So that was another decision I made. If I get a little bit nervous because of that, I want to get started, I want to connect. But if I don't enjoy teaching or lecturing, I should just sit on my own at home and just write books or write articles instead, which I do, of course. But I think we need to be clear with ourselves what we love to do, and if we love to do it, embrace it. And not be afraid to do it. Yeah.
That's such a powerful thing, to embrace what it is that you love, but also as a general rule in life, if you're approaching something and you're irritable about it, that's a really good signal that may not be the path for you. That may not be what you're meant to do, or at least not anymore, or at this point in your life. Now, I will say for me, I spent the first, I tell the story from time to time. When I was a girl, when I was very young, I was like a little Lisa Simpson. Like I was always like, fight for what's right and all that stuff. And then as I grew a little bit, I thought that I wanted to be Madonna. And I spent a whole lot of years trying to be Madonna. And as you were sharing about the dread, like now I realize I had a lot of dread when I would have to go sing someplace, or, I had a show booked or something like that. But then what happened was my Saturn return happened at the same time as Pluto conjuncted my moon. And I realized the world already has a Madonna. It doesn't need another Madonna, but it maybe could use a Nadiya Shah. And I had no idea who that was. So I was just sort of like in this dark night of the soul for a while. And astrology was really there for me. And on the other side, I became a full-time astrologer. I've always had like this thing about teaching, and I've always been a nerd. And so it just made so much sense for me to launch a university. But a lot of it was just so instinctive. It was so intuitive. Like, yeah, I want to have a school, and I'm going to call it Synchronicity University because I went to university and I'm a nerd. So of course, and it has to be synchronicity because of Carl Jung. And so all of that stuff just kind of came together. And I know that for the London School of Astrology, you guys have these huge astrologers. And now my school has been expanding over the last year, and including a lot of big astrologers as well. And so it's really nice to like be in this place now for you and I, because I know that you and I have known each other for years, but it really has been with this project coming together that we've really got to know each other. And I feel like this whole other level of, yes, of course, love and adoration, but this whole other level of respect for you as well, with actually putting on a conference event together. It's really exciting.
Oh, I feel that too. Thank you. Thank you. It's great. Always say this to people at the LSA, new students and new tutors there. We have a lovely group. We sort of foster this supportive energy instead of any sort of negativity. And I try to do that with my events, and I think we're doing it with this one as well. It's I'm keeping my fingers crossed, of course, but it's really about bringing people together to share ideas. There's not one type of astrology. There's not one type of approach, one type of astrologer. We all have different talents, different ways of communicating our astrology. We all have, I always say to students, whatever you have learned in your life up to this point, you're going to bring to your astrology, whatever astrology that ends up being. It doesn't matter, but you will be the astrologer that reflects the person you are and how you see life. And astrology will expand the way you see life and contribute to that too. So all of these points just mean really that I'm very grateful that we're doing this drama-free, and we've got a group of people that that we both respect and love, and we'll have some fun doing it. And I really hope that energy, that sense of fun comes across to people who sign up as well.
I love that it is the sense of what's embracing the community. Like when we say that and we say a celebration of astrologies, it really is astrologers from all different kinds of perspectives. And I think the fact that we are going to start the conference, the chart for the start of the conference gives us Moon conjunct Jupiter in Aquarius. It gives us a Sagittarius midheaven. There was this intention that we had to make it a party and to make it really inclusive, to have everybody from different astrological perspectives and schools and approaches joining us together, so that you really, as a participant, as somebody who is joining in or signing up for the conference, you get to have these different ways of looking at the sky and looking at the chart. And going back to what you were just saying earlier, I like to say you can't have astrology without the astrologer. And it truly is, whoever it is that you are bringing that to the sky, because what we are doing is we are interpreting symbols. And when you do interpret, what you do is you reveal what you believe about yourself and about the world and about your potential. And all of that just comes together just in your interpretation. And so it's very powerful to look at what types of astrologies are going to be a part of this event and how it is that different people and whom it is that they are shows up in terms of what they end up teaching.
Yes. And with any conference over 2 days with one track, as we've got, there are going to be things that don't necessarily click immediately, and you go back and you think, gosh, that makes sense later. Or you desperate to hear one person give a lecture and not worry too much about maybe 2 or 3 others. And then you realize that, in fact, we're going to be learning from everybody. And that's what I love about conferences. The difficulty is that in person, a lot of conferences that you and I go to and have been to, you'll get 5 tracks, sometimes up to 17 tracks. And you end up actually going to a conference and socializing instead of learning because you haven't seen those people for years, and there's so much choice. You think, I'll just buy the recording because there's too much. Having one track as we're doing live with the chat box open and for questions and interaction at the end with the speakers, not having to choose, we're guiding everybody through the weekend in hopefully in a safe space that's comfortable for people, but you're not faced with that agony of, oh, do I go and see them in that room or down the hall to somebody else? We don't have that, which is, I think, a blessing to be able to do that online without that problem.
And I also really love that the recordings are going to be available to people. Recordings are included. And so you can go back and rewatch, or if you need to go do something, you can go do that, and you can make sure and know that you will have access to that recording. As I like to say, when you have the recording, you can learn from it infinitely. And so really, it's incredible how sometimes you'll go back and watch the same class or the same webinar or read the same book, and you pick up something very different because you are different the next time that you go to it. And so I love that we were able to put that together to have recordings available to everybody as well.
Oh, that's important, because conferences are tiring. You're sitting there, and I often, when I'm lecturing in London in person, which I haven't done properly for a while because of the lockdown, I always think, I wonder who's more exhausted, the person receiving the information and interacting, or me running around answering everybody's questions and presenting. It can be, learning is a very feeding experience, which, if you've got a lot of lectures as we've got, you might want to take a break for an hour or an extra hour and then come back to it later. So totally understand that. And it's a lot of feeding that we're offering in that weekend.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun because it is supposed to be a party at the end of the day. And so, yes, we'll be in the chat box, we'll be having a party, and then we'll have these incredible teachers who are going to be sharing as well.
Yeah.
And so, do we want to mention some of the teachers, even though some of these teachers, if not all of these teachers, actually have appeared on my YouTube channel? And so everybody out there has gotten a chance to see me sit down with them, just like I'm sitting down here with you and talking to them about what they believe and what they think and all this kind of stuff. And also to share a little bit about what they're actually going to be teaching as part of this conference as well. But we can mention a few names as we're going to do this. Cameron Allen, he is a herbalist and he does medical astrology. And so I think that's really exciting that he's going to be joining us because he's taught at Synchronicity University before. He will be again in the spring. And bringing that health perspective, I feel like that is a part of being inclusive in terms of celebrating the community, because that is an important part of our tradition, is that connection between healing and medicine and astrology as a tool to help us to understand how to do that. In fact, medieval doctors incorporated astrology into their consultations to figure out what was going on with patients. So it'll be nice to have that element there.
Yeah, I agree. I think people get a little bit anxious about medical astrology sometimes, just like getting anxious going to see an astrologer or a palmist or anybody that allegedly has the power to see what's going to happen. And I think in the right hands, medical astrology can be incredibly empowering. It can be a tool for great learning and healing as well, of course. So I'm looking forward to that one. I'll have to. Yes, we'll have to look at the times because there's a schedule online of all the times with all the different time zones, which I put together. I even had checked to make sure because, summertime.
Great job. Frank put together
I'm hoping I got it right.
Yes. Frank did this immaculate, beautiful Virgo moon PDF that only he could do with his Virgo moon. And it is brilliant. So yes, you can actually, everybody out there can download that or see that at synchronicityuniversity.com. But yes, the schedule is there as well. There's all kinds of information there on the main site.
We have two people who haven't been to Synchronicity University yet. That's Alejo Lopez and Richard Swatton. So they're two new people that I've worked with in the past or hired to do different things. I've known Richard for a long time. He's a psychotherapist and an astrologer, and but also very much learned in terms of the tradition as well. He went, he's got a history of not only the Liz Green end, but also the Jeffrey Cornelius end, which I know you have majorly influenced by as well, Nadiya. So Richard brings together the psychological as well as the classical in many ways. So he's there. Alejo is, I don't know how old he is actually. He's certainly a lot younger than I am. I think he's in his 30s. And he did a great lecture on sexuality, looking at Venus and Mars about a year ago at one of my other conferences as well. And so it's, again, great to hear different perspectives. I'm going to sound old now to see what the younger generation interests in as well, because I think the great thing about this conference that you and I wanted was not just a great diverse number of approaches, but also really different generations. So we can learn from the what we call the Astro-Legends, and then we can learn from the newer up and coming. And when I say up and coming, it doesn't mean they don't know their stuff. It simply means they're up and coming in the astrology world. People are getting to recognize their work and they're getting more experience in that way. And so, yes, I think you and I are somewhere in between there, aren't we, Nadiya? Between those people up there, those legends, and the ones that are coming up and way, way too young.
Well, we're being diligent with the legacy that we are creating. That's for sure. Yes, I think we could put it that way. And yeah, not a lot of these teachers that are going to be here haven't been at Synchronicity University before, but we have known of their reputation, of course, and we know that they've done great work out there, or they're bringing really great perspectives that we wanted to include in this program as well. Like, for example, some big dogs that we are going to see include Rick Levine and Maurice Fernandez, for example. Now, Michael Lutin as well is a big dog, but he is somebody who has been at Synchronicity University before. And so these people are going to bring their own unique perspectives, like Maurice Fernandez with evolutionary astrology, and Rick Levine. He just has this wonderful but also psychological way of looking at the sky. And Michael Lutin, of course, with his very distinct wit and brilliance. So I think that sense of people really having established themselves as, well, look, Rick Levine, Michael Lutin, they are living legends, but we've got a lot of people there who are like on that pathway, like you and I, like Maurice Fernandez, Rebecca Gordon as well, right? She is a very big dog astrologer, and I'm so excited to have her as well. She's just an incredible person, getting to know her. And so, yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun for people to learn from these different people that are very well known in our community.
And it's the voices that we're interested in, really, the perspectives, the knowledge. As you say, some of the big dogs. I think of Michael Lutin more as a pussycat these days than a big dog. But you know, when you go and see some of these people regularly over the years, yes, it's about the take. It's about not always about a particular subject, but it's an accumulation of their knowledge. It's the fact that over the years they've been talking on the different stages. So we just had Saturn Pluto a year ago, the conjunction and the whole aftermath of that we're still feeling, etc. These are astrologers that were at conferences talking about previous Saturn Pluto conjunctions, and that's what's so fascinating, is that we can learn from. I did an interview with Stephen Arroyo. When was it now? A few months back, for a conference, and I said to him, he was at the Jupiter-Saturn conference in 1980 that he did with Liz Green and a few others, the Saturn-Pluto in 82, and one of the questions I asked him was, what is the difference? What are you seeing in the astrology world that wasn't there back at the last conjunction, at the last Jupiter-Saturn, Saturn-Pluto conjunction? And it's fascinating because, if you and I are still doing what we'd love to do, Nadiya, in 30 years' time, we'll be talking about yet another Saturn-Uranus, yet another situation. It's fascinating that every time we write about these cycles, life continues. There are new cycles to look at, and we have a collective experience of being heavily invested and involved and researching all of these fascinating cycles. So I guess it can only accumulate in you and your knowledge. And I think that's what we get from people like Michael Lutin and Rick Levine, and of course others as well.
Yes. And I mean, I really like to say that ever since I was a little girl, I have wanted to live until I'm 150 years old. Like, I've been saying that ever since I was a little girl. And the reason is because even though I know that my soul, there's something eternal within me, I always thought that it would be so cool, to feel like all of it, like I was able to see everything I wanted and do everything I wanted. But especially once I became an astrologer, it was like, wouldn't it be so cool to be around for like an entire Neptune cycle, to actually live through that and see what that would be like. Now, Neptune, maybe not the best example, but yeah, let's have a couple of Uranus transits, or Uranus around the zodiac or around my chart a couple of times. Why not? Because you gain so much just as an astrologer, being able to observe cycles. It's one thing to observe it in like real time and to talk about it. It's another thing to like actually live through it. And so I think it's going to continue to be an adventure for you and I, given where we are in terms of not quite legends and yet also, carving out that space and legacy of our own.
Yes, I think to be a legend, you have to have other people call you that, don't you?
Don't you?
I know friends and people that are always calling themselves legends, and my Virgo moon just wants to cringe. But I do want to see you, Nadiya, lecture on the Neptune return. While you're there, you might be, I don't know, you could be smoking something ethereal and have a big cloud of smoke. And
by then we'll have like a vape machine or something, right? And it'll be pink mist all around, and I'll be wearing heart-shaped glasses or something, and I'll be like, this is cool, man. Listen, I know something about Neptune.
You will. You'll be the vape machine itself that everybody else is feeding off.
I know, right? This is exactly the kind of conversations I have with Frank all the time. So this is just so much fun. But yeah, wouldn't that be a kick? You know what? I remember, and I've been using this example quite a bit in talks that I've been doing about Pluto and Aquarius. And there's this show, and it's like this HBO, but also like British show. And it's called Years and Years. It was like a miniseries, a 6-part miniseries. And it's based in London. And anyways, in the first episode, this young girl comes to her parents, and she says to them, I think I'm trans. And her parents, sort of stop and say, okay, you know what, like whatever, whether you decide to be a boy or a girl or whatever you feel you are, we love you and we support you. And this girl gets this confused look on her face, and she says, no, I'm not transgendered. I believe that I'm transhuman. And so basically what she wanted to do was she wanted to upload her consciousness into the cloud, because there was this technology available now where you didn't have to be in your body if you didn't want to be. You could just live in the cloud, and you could live there forever and ever if you wanted to. And her parents then freaked out and screamed and yelled and all that kind of stuff. As you would. I know, right? But I like to use this example when I lecture on Pluto and Aquarius, because I feel like we may be heading in that direction where people are going to be like, yeah, let's just live and upload our consciousness to the cloud. Why not? Because consciousness and matter are two totally separate things, and we may start to see the dark side of that. And I'm saying all of this to say, yeah, maybe I will be around for my Neptune return. And maybe I will be lecturing, and maybe I will be a vape machine. Who knows?
I think it's, every generation is said to sort of rebel against its predecessor, that sense of we want to do things differently. The Pluto and Leo generation born, during the war and after the war, rediscovered sex, redefined this and all, their authority, etc. But I wonder whether the new generations will, rather than rebel, will just reinvent consciousness, or they'll reinvent something that is very foreign to the previous generation. I think maybe that, as you're saying, that's where we're going. We're probably, it's the older generations that again that get their mind blown by the new generations who are just experiencing and wanting, if we stay keen at whatever other people, keep in touch with technology, get the latest phone if you can, because technology moves so quickly. If you skip a few years, you'll be lost. And I wonder whether we're going to have massive leaps of that in the coming 10, 15 years. And you and I better hold on. It's going to be an interesting roller coaster ride, isn't it?
Yes. But you do have Jupiter in Aquarius. I have my sun in Aquarius. So I think we'll be able to keep up. I think we're going to be okay. So. Yeah. But I've already started talking about this. I've already started doing talks on Pluto and Aquarius. Later this year, I'm going to start doing talks on Uranus and Gemini. And so, yeah, I think like we're already there in a way, but it is just going to unfold at a very accelerated rate. Now, before we get back to the rest of the speakers, I did want to ask you, just based on some of the things that you were saying, what do you make of all these current billionaires trying to get to space? being very determined to go into outer space. What do you make of that?
I haven't given it much thought. It's a bit like going on the Concorde. It feels like it's a status symbol. I don't know what it feels like to be up there, whether it's literally like going to the highest building and bungee jumping. I don't know. I don't know what the motivation is. My moon in Virgo says it costs a lot and there are still people starving that could do with that money. That's part of what I think. But I haven't given it a huge amount of thought. And I don't really know necessarily why people are doing that, except it feels like it's the latest status symbol. But correct me if I'm ignorant in that area. But do you know much about that?
Well, I'm just thinking off the top of my head that it might be connected to Saturn in Aquarius. And I mean, the reason is because, Aquarius is an energy of being far out, of being, believing in aliens and things. I'll give you an example of how, and I understand that it depends how you approach astrology. But I think a lot of, especially in the Western world, we look at astrology as very Aquarian. I had an experience once, one of the very few times that I was actually stopped by a customs dude. So I was flying into New York from Mexico City, and it was like very early in the morning. I'd been up all night, and I kind of like ended up asking for it because I was walking around completely confused and asking everybody questions that I shouldn't have been instead of being a professional. But anyways, so I'm like wandering around. And so of course somebody comes up to me from Homeland Security and says, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so then I ended up talking to this person. And he's like, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I own a small," what did I say? I always say this. I own a small multimedia company. That's what I say when I don't want to say I'm an astrologer. And it's the truth, right? I own a small multimedia company. So he said, "Wait, what do you do?" And then I said, "Well, okay, I have a YouTube channel and I write books." And he said, "Oh yeah, what's your YouTube channel about?" And I said, "Astrology, it's all astrology." And without skipping a beat, the guy says, "You know what? My uncle has a friend who swears that he was abducted by aliens like 20 years ago." And then from that point on, we just talked about abducted by aliens and if I believed in aliens and stuff like that. So we have this connection in our minds with Aquarian energy and, this exploration or what we don't know. And I think that might be part of it. And then the Saturn has to do with, what's kind of like the big dogs, right? Saturn is very much about the big dogs and who's been doing it and who's the legend. And it's almost like they're trying to prove that they're legendary by going far out and being far out there. So I think that might be part of it.
And testing it, yes. And I just hope there are no accidents. If there are accidents, it would probably just completely quash the whole excitement of going up there, maybe or maybe not. I think the square to Uranus certainly says, let's push it. Let's go somewhere beyond. So that double Aquarius Uranus message in the sky probably speaks to that. It's fascinating when you look at the charts of people that have, everybody from H.G. Wells to the creator of the X-Files to Gene Roddenberry. It's that final first two outer planets, Uranus and Neptune. So you see those planets incredibly strong in these people's charts because not only do they want to go somewhere new in that Uranian way, push the border, break free of what we think is possible, but there's also that vision of Neptune, that dream of what if there is intelligent life, more intelligent than just life, than people on this planet. So it's very Aquarius, Pisces, Uranus, Neptune, I think as well. Yeah.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So let's just jump back in. I want to be sure that we touch on all the other speakers because we have just a few more to touch on. Michael Barwick, of course, lots of people have seen him at Synchronicity University. He'll be bringing a traditional perspective. And then in contrast to that, in a way, is Clarissa Dolphin, who'll be bringing the perspective of vibrational astrology, which is really very cutting edge. And it's all about, like, it's almost like breaking beyond rules and getting right to the emotion of the energy you see in the chart. So I think that's going to be a really interesting and wonderful contrast to see playing out for people. And, you know, because I've lived in Mexico for so long, I've almost 9 years now, and it is my adopted home. I wanted to be sure that I wanted to have that perspective included as well. And so we have Yuriria Robles bringing Mayan astrology. Now she and I are working, well, yeah, we've completed a book together on Mayan astrology. And that was really important to me because I feel like that is one perspective that unfortunately is sometimes left out, the power of indigenous forms of astrology of Mesoamerica. And so I love that we're able to, like, just shine light and bring some love to different astrologies and different people practicing different astrologies that maybe don't always get that recognition. Yeah. So it's very exciting. Yeah. Jason Holley, you were the one who recommended Jason Holley, and I ended up talking to him. It was such an amazing conversation. He does mythology and psychology and astrology, and he's just all about an embodied astrology. He talks about how the chart is an ecosystem in and of itself and how powerful that is. So I loved talking to him and getting to know him from that perspective. And I know that he's going to bring this whole other layer of wisdom to our understanding of our charts and also practical techniques as well. And finally, I mean, someone who I'm just completely in love with is Rachel Schwartz. She is one of the leading Kabbalistic astrologers in the world. And that also is a perspective that I think sometimes in these different online events doesn't get as much shine. Yeah, it doesn't get as much light as it should because it's just this wonderful mystical tradition. And she really is one of the best people to teach it. And she's a Leo and she's just such a superstar. So I'm really looking forward to a very entertaining, but also very insightful talk from her as well. And she has taught at Synchronicity University, and she will be teaching at Synchronicity University later this fall as well. So yeah, I love that we were able to put something so incredible and so diverse together to really respect and honor just how diverse our community is. I don't think we've ever seen a conference where we had this type of diversity of voices.
I'm not aware of one, or if there has been one, it might be a sort of UAC where there's 150 speakers, and again, you're challenged to choose, and you end up perhaps a little frozen and then just ending up having coffee with somebody instead of going to a lecture. So I love the idea that the weekend is full of many different approaches. Some will speak to you immediately, I imagine. Others will take time to percolate and just sit, or you'll come back to something. I've done this many a time with conferences online. You're working on a subject later, and then you think, okay, I'll go back and finally watch that area. I've been writing on draconic astrology recently, and I just went back and watched a series of videos from different places to get people's opinions, to get their approaches, to understand what other people are doing in that area. So always very useful. When it comes to conferences, you and I are smooth operators, aren't we, Nadiya? I think we are, generally.
Well, generally, and we've been around a little while as well. And just, so we remember, we are starting with Moon conjunct Jupiter. Like, that is the chart of the conference. And so my hope is that that energy ends up blessing us with really good technology and internet connections. My hope is that the internet gods work on our behalf for that weekend, of course. But these things have their own perfection. I'm also really big on ceremony. So I do want to add, like, opening ceremony and closing ceremony I will be doing as well. So let's hope that we put that intention out there, and everybody joins into that so that we put the intention for beautiful, smooth, incredible, just perfect internet, the most perfect internet over the course of a weekend that has ever been over the course of any weekend ever. Let's just do it like that. Me and my Sag moon, right? I'm always like, ever in the great. Yeah, let's do it like that. Yeah.
And never again. Just that weekend.
Well, up until that point in history, let's make it the greatest.
Okay.
And then the next time we do something, let's make that one even greater than what was before, if that's even possible. But yes, if we have smooth, easy breezy internet, yes, we will be the most blessed of all the blessed.
Indeed. Wonderful.
Well, Frank, I've loved that I get to work on this with you. I've loved learning about you, and I love that you and I share this vision of celebrating astrology and bringing forward all these different astrological perspectives for a very fun and spiritual and exciting and insightful and weekend of learning and inspiration and moments that may be aha moments, as Oprah calls it, or moments of self-reflection. I mean, I just think there is enough space for all of that in a weekend like this. So I love that you and I have gotten to know each other that much more and worked on something this cool as well. Because it is cool, isn't it? It is cool. Yeah.
We wouldn't be allowed to share the conversations that we have before we press the record button.
No, we wouldn't.
And I really appreciate making you laugh in a very naughty way. So I think
yes, that's true. That's true. Frank does that. You would never know that about Frank, but yes, he has a knack for wit. I mean, just the fun of trying to top his wit, knowing that I cannot top his wit, is just so much fun to exchange messages with him. I love you, Frank. I love everybody out there, but thank you. And everybody out there, remember, Embracing the Community, a celebration of astrologies. It is a joint London School of Astrology and Synchronicity University event, the online conference event of the year, as I am calling it, over the course of the Autumn Equinox weekend 2021. Links are in the description below. Go to synchronicityuniversity.com. Coupon codes are available as well, and you can get big discounts for a limited time. All of that is online. So once again, Frank, thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. I think you're amazing. I think you're brilliant. And I am really looking forward to the party that we put together.
Me too. Thank you. And right back at you as well.
And thank you, everybody out there, for watching. And until we connect again, take care. Bye.